The captain wasn't the real problem on the Batavia. And that's what makes this 1629 shipwreck so dangerous to understand. We've all heard the story. A Dutch East Indiaman runs aground on the Abrolhos Islands in 1629. The crew fractures. A mutineer named Cornelisz seizes power and orchestrates murders. Chaos, savagery. The narrative is clean. Bad captain, worse mutineer, civilization collapses. I've read the logbook myself, or rather, the surviving accounts, and they do tell you that. But they don't tell you why a man like Cornelisz could convince rational sailors to commit atrocities. That's the part historians gloss over. And it matters. The Batavia left the Dutch port of Texel in October 1628. She was carrying around 200 souls, crew, soldiers, passengers, some heading to Batavia itself, the jewel of the VOC's eastern holdings. She was also carrying a cargo worth a fortune in spices and silks. The voyage should have taken 5 months. It took catastrophe instead. On June 4, 1629, in the pre-dawn dark, the Batavia struck a reef off the Abrolhos Islands. The ship didn't sink immediately. She hung there, broken but afloat. Captain Cohen made the right call. Beach her on a nearby island, salvage what you can, wait for rescue. Reasonable, orderly. The kind of decision you make when you still believe authority means something. Most of the crew and passengers made it to the island. But Cohen then made a second decision, a fatal one. He took a small boat and sailed to Java to fetch help, leaving behind 250 people with limited supplies on a barren rock. He thought order would hold. It didn't. Within days, a man named Cornelisz began to consolidate power. The accepted history says he was simply a criminal, a sociopath waiting for his moment. But that's where we need to pause. Cornelisz wasn't a warship captain or a nobleman. He was an apothecary, a man of learning, literate, educated. He had status, but not power. And now, marooned with authority dissolved, he saw an opening. He began to speak to the soldiers and crew about fairness. He argued that the officers had hoarded supplies, that the weak would die first under the old hierarchy. That survival required a new order, reasonable words, seductive words. Here's what the standard account gets wrong. It treats Cornelisz as an aberration, a monster who manipulated innocents. But survivors' testimonies, and I've seen fragments of these, show something more unsettling. Men wanted to believe him. In the absence of legitimate authority, his logic filled a void. He wasn't forcing compliance at first. He was offering meaning. Cornelisz organized the camp into factions. He identified potential rivals, officers, strong personalities, and began spreading rumors about them. Hoarding, betrayal, sexual assault. Some accusations may have had kernels of truth. Others were pure fabrication. But in isolation, on a barren island, with limited food and no external authority to fact-check, rumors became conviction. This wasn't random violence. It was systematic elimination dressed up as justice. The first deaths were framed as accidents, then as necessary executions of traitors. By July, Cornelisz had orchestrated the murder of dozens, perhaps more. The records are fragmentary, but the pattern is clear. Each killing reinforced his authority. Each killing made the remaining crew more dependent on him for safety. He created a closed loop. Chaos requires a strong hand. I am the hand. Therefore, question me, and chaos returns. But here's where the real explanation emerges. Cornelisz's power wasn't built on strength or fear alone. It was built on philosophy. He gave men a framework. He said, the old rules are dead. Survival is the only morality now. Loyalty to me is loyalty to life itself. And crucially, he made the crew complicit. They weren't victims of his violence. They were executioners. They'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. When rescue finally arrived in September, Cornelisz's regime collapsed instantly. The Dutch authorities captured him, tried him, and executed him in Batavia. The story ended. The official history said, madman contained, justice served. But the real lesson wasn't about Cornelisz at all. The Batavia teaches us something Stoics understood, but we've forgotten. Authority doesn't come from titles. It comes from narrative. Cornelisz didn't have institutional power, so he created moral authority through language. He convinced men that his violence was necessary. That's not a failing of weak men. That's a feature of human psychology we all carry. We see this pattern everywhere. In boardrooms where a charismatic executive redefines ethics. In online communities where a moderator gradually normalizes cruelty as necessary truth. In politics where fear becomes the foundation for loyalty. The mechanism is identical. The island is just more visible. The practical wisdom here isn't avoid bad leaders. It's harder than that. It's notice when you're being offered a asterisk new morality asterisk in a moment of uncertainty. Notice when your compliance is being normalized incrementally. Notice when you're being made complicit. Because once you are, stepping back requires admitting you were wrong. And most of us will do almost anything to avoid that admission. The Batavia's wreck wasn't a story about a mutiny. It was a story about how quickly we abandon our principles when someone offers us a coherent alternative, and how seductive that alternative can be when everything else is falling apart. That's the real shipwreck, not the reef, the ideology, and it's still happening on different islands with different names. The question isn't whether Cornelisz was evil. The question is, what makes you vulnerable to becoming him, or worse, becoming one of his crew? Subscribe. Each week, we examine how ancient crises illuminate modern choices, so you can recognize the patterns before they shipwreck you.